Tonight, UConn will break the curse of the Big East opener. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to say thank you to everyone that's downloading the podcast, that is viewing this for the first time. Maybe the podcast has grown so much since March, and it's because of fans like you, people who are curious about UConn basketball, football, the whole deal, but also are my everydayers and diehards that are really into getting great UConn content every day. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering both the UConn men's and women's basketball, the basketball capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. So to show our gratitude, we're giving back and donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to UConn games, and we're also making monthly donations to Bleeding Blue for Good, supporting NIL initiatives that make a difference. So if you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, and leave a review wherever you listen. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. The college football playoff is here. And if you don't want to miss a moment of the action, the college football playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games, December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. Okay. Now that we got all of that out of the way, that's our title sponsor, the Allstate college football playoff, all of that. UConn versus Xavier. Big East home opener, UConn Nation. Look, let's talk about the curse in the room, or the elephant in the room if you want. This beginning of the season Big East play. By the way, social media, men's basketball and women's basketball, just dominating the Twitter sphere. The video of Madison Square Garden where we got our stuff back, and all of that, Dan spiking the ball there, getting his 300th win. The women doing the Fortnite in the because I think the first thing that popped into anyone's head is like, how cool would it be to play a video game on those giant screens at Gamble? So that was a really cool video. Shout out to the women on a dominant performance last night as well. But as far as the men go, they just haven't had a good history in Big East openers. And it's just, we're talking 19-26. We talked about it yesterday all the time, 8-12 at home. And even under Dan Hurley, who has completely turned the trajectory of this program around, they're sitting at 1-5 in Big East home openers. But this is a brand new year. We are undefeated on the mainland, as they say. And this UConn team is looking to absolutely buck that trend. They come in 8-3, fresh off a strong non-conference performance, capped by a gutsy win, dominant win, in my opinion, over Gonzaga. I felt uncomfortable probably 3 times in the Gonzaga game. But if you went back and looked at it, it never felt like Gonzaga had the juice to continue to push them past either being tied or getting it down to 1. And, I don't think it's going to be all smooth sailing, because we have Samson Johnson, who's described by Dan Hurley as the heart and soul of this team. Someone that I put out a tweet. This is where I feel like, again, Dan Hurley is my spirit animal, because when I put something out, I do typically hear a similar response in his presser the next day or his media availability. And he said that in his media availability, there were stories written about it. But I tweeted when Samson went down, I said, if Samson's out for an extended period of time, we're going to miss him. And all of the people that were, essentially throwing him to the curb because we got a shiny new toy in Tarris Reed, who's been fantastic, you don't realize all of the things that he does to help this team win. And his energy, his presence, his ability to elevate the team emotionally. This isn't fantasy football, guys. You know what I mean? Like, so when we talk about players, we're talking about human beings, kids that have put their heart and soul on the line to be a part of something special at UConn. He's a 2-time national champion. And yes, his stats are, 7.4 points, 2.5 rebounds, almost 2 blocks. They don't leap off at the page. But if you watch him play, he plays so hard. He plays like a warrior. And his impact goes well beyond the numbers. Hurley put it best. You can't quantify how important he is. His absence creates a void both on and off the court. He went on to talk about how if Tarris Reed is going to take his shoes and fill his shoes, he's going to have to be on a 12 on a scale of 10 from an intensity standpoint. I think that's scary for the Xavier Musketeers, because a more intense Tarris Reed coming out of the gates firing with their biggest player and best player, Zach Freemantle, sidelined with a lower back injury, is a terrifying situation for this Xavier team. We just talked about it. They're dealing with their own major loss. Leading scorer and rebounder Zach Freemantle is sidelined with a lower body injury. He's been averaging about 17 points and 7.7 rebounds per game. And without him, Xavier's offense and size, especially in the paint, are going to take a significant hit. As much as this loss to them helps UConn on paper, you have to feel for a guy like Freemantle, who I wanted to see play. And I know Alex said it in media availability that it sucks that he's not going to be there. Dan said the same thing. I know this guy, Zach Freemantle, has been battling injuries throughout his career, so I wish him the best, man. I have no ill will towards Xavier. I think they're a good program. I like Sean Miller. Love his podcast. Shout out to Sean Miller podcast. Look, you never want to play a team with a diminished team, because people start to question, well, how good was that win? Because they didn't have their best player. That started with Baylor when Jeremy Roach got concussed and VJ Edgecombe was out. Had a fully functional Texas team, and we killed them. Gonzaga, full strength. We took care of business. So now we're down a guy, which is the tough part. But we do get a guy back in Ahmad Nowell. We're going to talk about that and a few other things when we come back after the break. What's up, everybody? Let's get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Our friends at Prize Picks, UConn Nation. Here's something to think about. What do you think about Liam McNeeley? Is he going more or less than 14.5 points tonight? Maybe you're feeling solo ball to go over 15.5 points, or Alex Caravan to bounce back and hit over 1.5 3-pointers made after going 0 for 7 in Madison Square Garden. It's an easy call with Prize Pick, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. You can just pick more or less on player projections, lock in your picks, and you're ready to win. I've been using Prize Picks all season, and it's been a game changer. Last week, I hit big with NFL picks. It's quick and easy and fun, and the payouts, fast and secure. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 off, or $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly in your account after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. And you're back on Locked On UConn with your host here, Mark Zanetto. Let's dive into some of the basketball side of things outside of the mentality of losing. A guy like Samson, your starting center, has to hurt them, but UConn enters this game as the most efficient team, as one of the most efficient teams in the country. Ranking number 4 in Ken Palm's offensive efficiency. And they've been unbeatable this season at home. 6-0 at the XL Center. The Huskies thrive on ball movement and defensive intensity. Both will be critical tonight. If you can tell by some of the post game and some of the antics that Dan has had over the last couple of games, and I say antics in a nice way. I don't mean it in a derogatory one. He's coaching this team hard, but he's doing it with intensity. There was one clip where he went to Liam and said, "Liam," just looked at him and went, "You're the man." Like, he just there's less what the F are you doing and more positive reinforcement. And I think part of that is that's always been a part of his DNA. I think people get this misnomer that he's MFing his players up and down the court, and that's just not. He's not Coach K. Coach K did that and did it in games, and so he doesn't do that. He's a guy who is a real tough guy to deal with in practice and leading up to the game. But the game is just like you're essentially doing. You're making sure people are in the right position. You're cheerleading more. You're almost being more of a therapist of like, calm down, we got this. But let's talk about some of the key players, right? Alex Garman, continues to be the steadying force for his team. He leads UConn in scoring with 15.6 points per game, shooting unimpressive, but also diminished 42.4% from beyond the arc. He was up at 48%, and my guy went 0 for 7 against Gonzaga. If you told me that Alex Caravan was going to go 0 for 7 from 3 and we'd still win that game, and rather convincingly, I would have told you were crazy. So he's a guy who sets the tone right away. I'm sorry about these little dings. I get them from time to time. I'm shutting them off. And then obviously a guy that I've crowned him, Liam McNeeley. If you weren't already hyped about his freshman year, you probably should be now. He's coming off a career high 26 points, 8 rebound performance against Gonzaga. When he showcased his ability to score at all 3 levels, I think he's a fantastic player. But I'm going to caution you on one thing. I think we all want to see Liam continue to be consistent. But if he can still be, if he can be in that 15 point per game scoring margin, I don't think we need him to give us 26 points every game, because that's just not what UConn basketball is about. But if he does need to do that, it's great to know that he has that ability, like the way Tristan did last year against Kansas to keep us in that game. So it's great for Dan to know that he's got that killer and that alpha, similar to Cam Spencer. But I also know that he's a freshman, and even though he's 19 years old, I don't expect the same type of game. I think he's going to attack. I think that's his new role. But I think this game's going to be a little more free-flowing in the respect of Xavier's going to try to – I would imagine they're going to try to slow us down a little bit. I don't think they want to go shot for shot against us and really get after it and play fast. I think they'll take their transition when they can get it. But if they can – I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Miller, with the absence of Zach Freemantle, implores kind of like those little junk, little token pressure to get their shot clock. That's worked against UConn this year. Worked in Maui. It's worked in certain instances against Gonzaga, where you kind of put them in these zones where it's extended out and you don't actually get into the shot clock until you're at the 22nd. It also limits possessions. So if you're, I don't know what the line is. We'll check that later. But if you're, a 12-point underdog or whatever, if you can limit those possessions, then you got a chance to compete. And I think Xavier is going to try to do that tonight. Ahmad Nowell's return tonight could be a game changer for UConn. We'll see what the plans are for his playing time, or when Dan thinks it's appropriate to him. Does he bypass Aiden Mahaney? Is he going to jump right in and back up Haas in that point guard role? Or are you going to see Aiden more off the ball tonight? I think those are going to be some interesting things to watch for. But the freshman point guard has missed the last 3 games with a shoulder issue, but he's cleared to play, bringing his dynamic playmaking and aggressive on-ball defense back to the Huskies rotation. Ahmad's ability to pressure opposing guards is going to be his calling card. And I think his ability to create transition opportunities could be crucial for his extended growth and more playing time this year, especially if Xavier goes small. I think you could see him having a bigger role tonight. And then meanwhile, so many guys, man. The sophomore duo of Jay Stu and Jay Ross. They continue to impress with their evolving roles. I think they've kind of flipped the script on each other in this respect. I think Jay Ross struggled with his shot lately, and Jay Stu has become a very reliable shooter and facilitator. I think he's kind of that fourth or fifth type scorer that this UConn team has had in their championship runs here, where on any given night, he can give you like 15, 16 points. And if he's hot, you feed him. Hit a big 3 on a set play. I mean, Madison Garden Stew. I think that was the nickname that the UConn socials gave him. And then Jay Ross, he really has embraced this role of kind of defensive spark plug, where he uses his length to disrupt opponents and, fester and really kind of, mess with them and try to see if he can get deflections. He got a steal and a breakaway layup against Ryan Nembhard at the Garden. I think that really showcased his ability to, flip momentum with big plays. And that's how you stay on the floor in this UConn team, because there's so many options that we can go to, that I think that's a huge, huge aspect. And if he can continue to build off of that defensive profile, I think he's going to make a significant impact on both ends of the floor, and especially tonight. So defensively, UConn has been a kind of a wall the last 3 games. They lead the nation in blocks per game, total with 6.8, thanks in large part to guys like Tarris Reed, who will fill in for Samson Johnson, who's also a hell of a shot blocker himself. And Tarris has stepped in and stepped up big in Johnson's absence. He was averaging 11.1 points and 8 rebounds per game, and will need to anchor the paint against whatever looks Xavier throws their way. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if his minutes are similar if they decide to go with a smaller lineup in the absence of Freemantle. And it kind of forces them to adapt, right? Ryan Nembhard is their go-to scorer now, averaging 16.5 points per game, shooting almost 45% from three. I like Davion McKnight. I like how he runs the show. He's averaging almost 5 assists per game. But without Freemantle, there's not that same dynamic ability to score. There's not that offensive rebounding presence. He's a fantastic offensive rebounder. I think honestly what we're going to see is Xavier's going to go a lot smaller and more perimeter oriented and see if they can just have one of those nights where they just can't miss. And that could also create some other opportunities for UConn to tweak with the lineup and have Alex be at the 5. So it should be an interesting night tonight. And another person to watch. I know you guys love him. I love him. He's a vibes guy, but he's starting to get some run. And without Samson, Youssouf Singare, the 6'11 sophomore, has stepped into a key moment against Gonzaga where he gave Dan Hurley some valuable minutes and absolutely could do the same thing tonight, because the story of UConn's season, outside of, the narrative of Maui and then back here home on the mainland, and you're winning 8 games in a row, or 8 games total and undefeated in the lower 48. The other narrative is they can't stop following, and that's gotten better. But if Tarris Reed has a setback with no Samson Johnson, then Youssouf Singare or Alex Caravan's going to have to step into the 5. So we'll see about if Singare's size and presence could be a difference maker tonight. He's pretty quick, and I loved his energy in the Gonzaga game. So we're going to take a break, and when we return, we're going to give you our predictions and expectations for tonight. A couple other things to look for. Hope everyone's going to go tonight and be loud at the XL Center. Big game, Big East opener. We're going to break that curse. I'm going to talk to you some more after the break. Don't you just love this time of year? College football, baby. It's back. The college football playoff. And with a newly expanded 12-team format. How can you beat that? I guarantee it's going to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all of the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you absolutely love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, just 3 days from now, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T. That starts at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And that leads into the first matchup, the upstart SMU Mustangs of the ACC battling tried and true Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then that's followed by, for another ACC team that's no stranger to the playoffs, the Clemson Tigers look to upset a team that was in the playoff last year, the Texas Longhorns of the SEC, in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn. Let's close out the program, shall we? So what can we expect tonight? First, I think UConn needs to get off to a fast start, because whenever there's like a streak or something that that these kids have thought about or been told, I don't know if Dan approaches the levels of petty of being like, hey, that we haven't really been great in Big East openers, and you can really change the narrative tonight. But he also can remember last year's, Big East opener against Seton Hall. Saw the Huskies dig themselves into a really early hole. I don't think they can afford that tonight. And the reason why is because they're a little shorthanded. They're without their starting center. I think if you look at it, I would think that Liam kind of comes back down to what we expect him to be, not playing like he's been in the pros for 10 years, but a very solid 12 to 15 point contributor. And I think Alex also comes back to his form and shoots the ball well tonight. They set the tone early with his scoring and leadership. Without Samson, I think Tarris is going to really utilize his size. He's been playing really well. I think he can handle the increased responsibility. I don't think Dan has any trepidation playing him big minutes tonight as long as he stays out of foul trouble. But I think he also likes to keep these guys fresh. And we'll see what kind of creative lineups that Dan Hurley throws our way. Possibly using Caravan or Jaylin Stewart at the 5. I think that'd be really cool. Especially if you can get Ahmad Nowell involved in this game. I'd love to see, as I talked about in both podcasts and written form, I'd love to see if there's an opportunity tonight to give Aidan Mahaney a 6-7 minute run where he's off the ball and he can create, as a primary scorer. We'll see. I think the crowd also can be a massive factor because, listen, everyone just espoused how amazing Madison Square Garden was for UConn, right? And I think we all know how good Gamble is. I think some of us, myself included, who have been to XL Center, although not recently, I know it's going through renovations, I just don't think that that's as big a home court advantage as it can be. And I think part of that is because, you're not playing all the best games there. But this team deserves the support. And I know there's people who will complain about that and say, oh, no, I pay my season tickets and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, cool. If you paid your season tickets and you don't like this game, then sell them to a UConn fan that's going to go over there and scream their ass off. How about that? Because this could be a potential home court fortress for UConn, and if the energy is right. And Dan Hurley has made it clear that fans need to bring it from the anthem to the final buzzer, just like they did at Madison Square Garden. Let's not be so excited that we're in New York and in the city and at the Garden that we forget that Hartford's one of our homes as well. Maybe $3 beer night will help lubricate the crowd a little bit. So make sure you're getting there early. If you are drinking, don't drive home, but go with a friend that's a DD or take an Uber or whatever. But have a few pops and get after it. I think my final prediction with this is UConn takes this one 84-69. They have the depth, the talent, the home court advantage to control the game. If it's a little closer, I think it's more of like a backdoor cover versus UConn being in a tight game and having them push it. I think they're going to control this from maybe not wire to wire, but from at one point during the game, they're going to take over and control it. I just think it's too much to ask of Xavier to win on the road Big East opener without Zach Freemantle. If he was in the game, I would 100% call this a toss-up because he's that type of game changer, especially with his acumen and IQ, basketball IQ that could potentially get a Samson Johnson or a Tarris Reed into foul trouble. If all things were equal, I think this would be more of like a 75-70 game. I think UConn could win it. Without Zach, I think they control it. I think they do a good job of limiting paint touches, and they stay at home and they don't give up three-pointers because I think that's what Xavier's going to look to do. But I think UConn can make a statement tonight. Already starting to see shows ask if UConn is still a three-peat favorite or still in the three-peat conversation. I say yes to that. But I also feel like, too, it's a way to, as Dan calls it, announce yourself to college basketball, but also to the Big East that it's time to play conference play, and we're going to get off to the right foot. We're not going to go 0-1 in conference. We're not going to lose at home. So, yeah, I'm here for it. But that's it for today. That's the episode of Locked On UConn. Tonight's game is about more than just a win. It's about setting the tone for the Big East season and getting off on the right foot. Foot on gas. Toughness meters rising. Get out there, have your $3 beers, maybe a shot before the game. I think Mark D'Amelio is going. Shout out to him. I'm sure some other interesting people will be there. I'm not sure if my man Little Red will be there, but I wish everybody all the best if you're going tonight. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. And also, don't forget, I'll be back after the game to break it all down live. What worked, what didn't. Want to see you on the show. Give us your interactions with the game. I've gotten some really great DMs of people that went to games in the city. If you want to send me a video when you're there, please go ahead and DM any of the Locked On UConn social medias on X, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever. Message me directly on X at MarksNettoCBB. But until then, stay locked on, stay connected, and as always, go Huskies.